When examining climate change and how people interact with the environment, we often look at how humans alter their surroundings. This project illustrates the profound economic, personal, and societal impacts of the environment on the town of Salida. This small recreationally based town in central Colorado thrives on three primary types of ecotourism: mountain biking, skiing, and sports on the Arkansas River. Without the climate and weather that this environment experiences, none of these activities would be possible. With a changing climate, the future of this community, as well as its financial stability, could see multiple shifts, both positive and negative. By looking at the way this town interacts with the earth, we can gain a comprehensive understanding of the intricate relationship between the environment, climate, and weather on human lifestyles. Our first interview was with Fred Maxwell and Heidi Slaymaker. When we asked Fred why he originally moved to Salida, he told us for one reason only: mountain biking. His wife Heidi later followed, and now they both teach at Salida High School. Fred Maxwell founded the Salida mountain bike team and continues to be an active part of the cyclist community.
I think there's a lot of people that consciously move here specifically for the biking, which is where I moved here from Oregon with no other reason than there's good mountain biking. And I think there are people that just travel here on a short-term basis just to ride their bikes. So I think it establishes a community, but it also brings in dollars.
I mean, it's amazing that a community of 5,000 can keep 3 bike shops alive. I think it says something towards what mountain biking does to for this community. And yeah, I feel like the more the word gets spread, the more people realize that this is a shoulder season resource for us, and it's helpful to all businesses, not just the bike shops.
Fred also mentioned in conversation the positive economic impact climate change is having on trail time. Since the temperature of our atmosphere is increasing, trails are drying out sooner and staying dry longer, extending the mountain bike season and thus increasing overall revenue. Second, we traveled to the home of Ken Venata, whose occupations depend entirely on seasonal recreational work. He is a Colorado State Parks officer in the summer, working on the river with law enforcement and with search and rescue. In the winter, he is a ski patroller at Monarch Mountain Ski Resort, continuing his work with rescue and also doing avalanche safety for Monarch and the local mountain passes.
Well, we're famous for our powder skiing there because of our quantity of snow, and that'll definitely attract a lot of skiers here away from other areas that obviously don't have the conditions we do. Everything seems to cycle, but having moved to Colorado in the 80s, it did seem like we had a lot more snow back at periods then than we do now. That's disputable. We did have over 500 inches of snowfall back in the, I think, 07-08 season, which was extraordinary. And then we've also had 2002 and 2012, which were severe droughts. So you got the extremes. Everything seems to cycle, and this year it's looking very much like we have potential for an average to above average ski season ahead of us.
Awesome. Salida's climate is warmer compared to other mountain towns at similar elevations such as Crested Butte. This is due to the fact that the town lies on the leeward side of the Collegiate Peaks, also known as the Banana Belt. When air rises over the top of the mountain range, it cools and discharges moisture on the windward slope. As the air is pulled down the other side, it is compacted and heated via adiabatic heating, warming and drying territory in the mountain's rain shadow. Therefore, Salida does not receive significant amount of precipitation and enjoys warmer weather conditions, especially during the winter. For our last interview, we talked to Rob White, who is the park manager of the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area, which is a Colorado state park that extends from just below Leadville to Lake Pueblo State Park.
So the Arkansas River is part of the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area. The Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area generates a little over $1 million in revenue each year from people who come to the river to boat, camp, picnic, fish. And the economic impact of everyone who comes here to boat, fish, raft with commercial companies is over $60 million a year in the Arkansas River Valley. And so the reason that we know that it's so important is in 2002, when we had a historic drought, our visitation was cut in half, and the community members, the local business people, told us that their revenue also suffered. They were down about 50% also. This past year, 2015, we had a great water season, but it was almost too much water. And when that happens, when we have historic type flows, which we did, over 5,000 CFS, which we hadn't seen here in over 20 years, we actually have to establish high water warnings. So we don't close the river, but we do issue a high water warning for different sections of the river, for example, the Numbers and the Royal Gorge. And that lets people know that those conditions at that time, extremely high water, can be very dangerous. And so ideally, what happens in terms of a water year is kind of an average year, where we have flows of about 2,000 to 3,000 CFS, and they're extended from, let's say, the beginning of the season, early June, all the way through mid-August. That would be ideal. There's definitely been a shift in river health and recreation since I started here. In 2000, although the river was a good fishery, it wasn't a gold medal fishery. And just last year, the Arkansas River, within the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area, was designated as a gold medal trout fishery. It's the longest one in the state. It's 102 miles long, and you can only get that status when you have a certain number of fish per mile, and those fish in that mile are a certain weight and girth. And so that was just established, and that's because of the continual cleanup efforts that are taking place up above us in the headwaters, where a lot of mining took place in the Leadville area. Those cleanup efforts and the fact that Parks and Wildlife continue to make improvements in the river corridor with better habitat for the fishery has improved the river tremendously. Oh, that's a great question. Climate change. I mean, it seems as though there's never an average year. And specifically, I think what I've noticed is that it seems as though since I've been here, there's been a little bit of a shift and we're getting runoff a little earlier than we have in the past. I would say 2 to 3 weeks early, at early May, right about till May 15th. And now we're seeing runoff start like the 1st of May, the last of April a lot, the last few years. And that typically didn't happen before. So, it seems as though things are warming up a little earlier, the snow melt is starting a little earlier than ever before, and that's shifting the patterns of use. So before you could count on fishing that first part of May, the river would still be low. And now what we're seeing is typically flows are a little higher and the fishing is not as good. So you got to fish the month of April instead of that month of May.
Ecotourism forces an emphasis of the triple bottom line, which balances the needs of the environment, economy, and people. In ecotourism-based communities, by definition, the environment must be preserved to create a viable economy, and tourism always keeps customer service primary. In regards to Salida, a degradation of the environment would cause economic stagnation or decline. Thus, the incentive to conserve the environment is both economical and social. With ecotourism, it is important to keep in mind that the people are subject to the environmental conditions. For example, less snow in winter means less ski profits. This is different than financial or service-based economies where the environment has little to no direct influence on the functions of the business. Environmental determinism, as seen with ecotourism, has declined in the 21st century because more time is spent inside than outdoors. Locations like Salida and other tourism hotspots are the reminder that the environment can provide recreation. It's also a location to humble humans to our roots. With increased technology, it's easier for humans to build shelters and attire and vehicles independent of the Earth's weather and conditions. However, it's important to remember that we are inhabitants of Earth, not masters of it. Keeping this in mind, as seen with ecotourism, case studies like Salida, Colorado, the triple bottom line is the only way to develop.